Okay, I can just go.
All right. So this is my presentation on how to fix broken Unity projects, because I feel like generally a lot of people still aren't sure what to do when something breaks. And I hope this presentation will give you the knowledge to apply in your own projects on how to fix issues. And for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Juan. Normally I work on Worlds. I make Unity editor extensions, and there you can find my GitHub, Twitter, Discord. You might have seen me around in the main Discord helping people fix their projects whenever like someone has something break. So here we have our beautiful, definitely not an asset pack world that we just made. And we finally decided to try it out, or we've been possibly working on this for a while now, and everything's been working fine until this point. But at some point when we go to upload, we just see this, which probably pretty much anyone who has made VRChat content has seen at least at one point. So all we have is the clear cache and player path. And if you aren't sure what to do next, you might maybe try clicking the button, which in most cases will do nothing. Or you might go ask help. Or in some cases, you might even just like say, okay, this project is busted, I'm gonna make a new one and move everything over, which is gonna, depending on the case, take a long time. So in basic troubleshooting, usually you wanna first identify the issue, understand what is actually happening, and then we solve it. So in Unity, we usually do this through the console. And by default, your console might look like this. And you might not be sure what the buttons do or how to read the information. And all you see is just like, can it add menu item, and you aren't sure like what is happening. So first of all, we start at the top left buttons. First, we have the clear button, which is called clear, except for currently happening issues. And we also have the toggle buttons for collapse, clear on play, and error pass. Here, like I cannot stress this enough. Make sure error pass is disabled, because that's always gonna cause problems. I mean, not always, but most of the time, if you have error pass enabled, things can break, especially uphill. Enabling collapse will help you see like less of the same messages, then narrow down the issue. And after you pressed clear once, it's usually gonna show just the issues that are happening currently, so you can just concentrate on those. And at the top right, we have the visibility buttons for info, warnings, and errors. And in this example, right now, errors are disabled. So even if you try to look for any errors, you won't see it. So it's important to always have errors enabled. I mean, unless you don't want to enable for some reason. And this is also can be confusing for some people. You start looking through and you see a lot of yellow things, and you aren't sure what the yellow things are. But in most cases, when things are breaking, the yellow things won't matter. And the errors are the ones you should be looking for. But even for them, not all errors matter. Sometimes, especially if you're on SDK2, and just enter play mode, go to upload, you will see a lot of these by default in the SDK, and that's normal. Like, these won't actually break anything. But now, we go back to our original console. And now we've enabled collapse, we've enabled errors to be visible. We have one message left, and this is the actual problem we need to solve. And when it comes down to reading the actual errors, it's good to break them down. Like here we see it's in, the problem file is in our assets, it's inside the VRC SDK, and the file itself is right there. So we might wonder, like, what's happening with VRC SDK to make it break? In most cases, of course, there's always exceptions. In most cases, the VRC SDK will work as long as you haven't done something to break it. So next, we look at the actual error message after the indication what file it is in. And it's saying something about SDK3, but we know this project is running on SDK2. So we might wonder, we have SDK2, why would it say something about SDK3? Well, usually this happens in projects where you might have swapped around, like from SDK2 to SDK3 or SDK3 to SDK2, and you think that just removing the files will clear all like mention of the other SDK. But in actuality, what the SDK does, it uses a thing called script-indefined symbols. These are used to load in parts of code only in certain configurations. And a lot of like different extensions use these to like help make things like faster. And in this case, we can see things are getting confusing for the SDK trying to load all the code for both SDKs. Because like most of the files for SDK, the scripts especially, contain both codes for SDK2 and SDK3. So now it's trying to load all that code that's supposed to be only running on one SDK. And it's also used by post-processing bakery and other things. So the easy fix is just removing the mention of SDK3. And the important part here is pressing enter, because if you don't press enter and just close out, it might, because that's how delayed fields are in Unity. They're annoying. And also here you can find another important part, the scripting runtime version at the top, that right now says .NET
Wait, I'm gonna change avatar.
Okay.
Please don't talk if you're not on stage.
4.x equivalent. So this can also break if you have it on the older one, which usually only happens if you're working on an older project and try to upgrade it to like newer SDK versions or newer Unity versions. And here's also 2 more examples of what might happen if you had some asset in your project and deleted it at some point. Because the script-indefined still exists and it's defined. Like in this case, my world tools will try to look for bakery or post-processing, but it can't find it because the actual scripts aren't there. And just the script-indefined is defined. And yeah. So we go to our example 2, which has a whole new different kind of message. And again, we identify what asset is causing the problem, which in this case is bakery. And now looking at the message, we want to usually always identify the important part, the part that doesn't change, because a lot of different projects can say a lot of different things. But if you want to Google an issue, you usually want to Google just the important part of the message, which might not be always easy to identify, but in this case, you can see Unity upgradable in brackets, so that's easy enough. And if you aren't sure what to do, you can Google it. And the first result, as long as, not in every case, in this case, it's really easy to find it on Google. You can find the Unity documentation page on how to use the API updater. The API updater itself is, in this error's case, it was bakery. Bakery is a Unity editor extension developed on Unity 5.6. And a lot of A lot of Unity APIs tend to change their names or their locations, but some, like the APIs, offer an automatic upgrade if you go to a new Unity version, and as long as the API still has the same function, even though it's at a different place. Normally, it would show it on import, but there are cases where it might not. And you can also find it going run API updater from the menus. It can be confusing for some people because it says like, I made a backup, go ahead. People might be worried like, am I gonna break things if I press this? And just because of that, say no thanks. But in this case, when we import a new asset, it's just gonna update the APIs on that asset. And because it's an external asset, we can just always re-import it if something goes wrong. So here's example 3, where we have a whole new kind of messages. And this time it's just saying something about copyright information. Like it's not, small message isn't telling us anything. So again, we select the message, and under the copyright message, we get the actual info we need. And looking at the important parts again, it says multiple assemblies with equivalent identity have been imported, and remove one of the duplicate references. And looking at the paths it gives us, one of these paths is inside our own project, and one of the paths is in Unity's own files. This can mostly happen with some Unity assets or assets that for some reason include their build demo, like the actual build Unity game inside their Unity packets, which you sometimes see. Like, thank God most don't, but there are the few ones that do. So the easy solution is just identify the demo folder and just delete that if you want to use the asset. If you aren't using the asset, you can just remove the generic Unity asset folder if needed, because that's deleting something that's broken is always going to be the easiest solution, unless it's inside the VRC SDK. And here for example 4, this time the location is a bit different. It's not inside our assets folder. And this time we can see it's inside the library folder. And this goes from the project root, so we can't really see the library folder from inside Unity. We need to go through Windows Explorer and find the package gets folder. And all the library folders, these are safe to delete. I mean, you should close your Unity before you're deleting them, but in most cases, it won't cause much harm deleting things there. All the library files contain is when you import an asset into your project, the stuff gets processed for it to be Unity friendly and to be run in the game engine, and it gets placed inside the library folder. And it also contains a lot of more information. Like for example, the package stats, that's where all packages imported from the package manager live. And we see that it's a package named Unity Multiplayer Hail API. So to fix these kind of issues, usually you just need 2 steps. You delete the package cache folder by navigating through Windows Explorer, project root, library, package cache, and just delete it, preferably when Unity is closed. And step 2, sometimes the first step is enough to fix this issue, but sometimes the issue persists because it's still in the package manifest that automatically imports packages back when you've deleted them. So easy fix here, if you don't know what these packages are or have no idea what's right here, you can just copy it over from a working project to the broken project. Just delete you can make a backup of the broken manifest just in case you need it, and just copy a working manifest from another project and reopen Unity, which in most cases will solve these kind of issues. And here we have a small flowchart, which mainly tells you what to do in most cases. So if the file is in the VRC SDK, re-import SDK. And I suggest you read the VRChat documentation, because that's where you always find the up-to-date way of correctly updating your SDK. In World, it doesn't really matter if you just, as long as you delete all the SDK files, not necessarily the examples folder, because that's fine. But stuff like Udon, VRC SDK, and stuff like that. But of course, when you come to other projects, there you might not want to just delete everything, because important files are being stored inside the SDK. And in the case, it's an external asset and not related to the VRC SDK. If you aren't using it, you can just go ahead and delete it, because that's the easiest way to get rid of it in most cases. If you are using it, it's recommended to go check for updates, like look up the GitHub page, or look up whatever release channel the asset is using, and do a clean import and update to the latest version. If it still persists, then it's good to make a bug report, because people who make things like to know when things break and like to know like what needs fixing. And in the case it's a legacy asset that has no support for newer Unity, then the best thing is either Google around for a weak fix or find a newer alternative that works for the current Unity version we are using. So here's one more example of these, but this time, so the control panel is showing up. You go to check the console again, but there's nothing in the console. You restart Unity, still nothing is working. Like no control panel, no errors, no nothing. In these cases, this can easily be reproduced by just crashing Unity when it's building. And to fix this, all you need to do is right-click the VRC SDK folder and press re-import. Either it's going to bring up errors, or it's just going to bring it back, or presses control panel. So now we have our control panel back, finally, after going through all those steps. But next, when we try to upload, we hit a new problem. Either your things aren't updating when you upload, it just keeps uploading the old version, or it's complaining that build didn't happen, or anything in between. These can be a little bit harder to track down depending on what the actual issue is. This is usually the good steps to figure out where the problem is. So trying an empty scene, if that works, you know it's the scene problem. But if the empty scene doesn't work, you know it's a project problem. And in some cases, you might get a clear error on scene problems, but in some cases you might not. So in those cases, it's just easiest, well, not really easiest, but you can just copy the scene to a duplicate, and in the duplicate slowly start removing game objects and to narrow down and figure out what might be causing the issue. So when we come back to the console again to figure out why things aren't building properly. In this case, we might again hit clear, and this happens. Because the issue isn't happening while we are just in the editor. It's only happening while we are building. So pressing clear just takes everything away. So the best case to narrow it down in this situation is just disabling warnings and info messages and just leaving errors enabled. So now we finally have only 3 errors left. The last one is just telling us there's other errors, like up above it. And we see the problem at this time is simple light pro placer, which most of you probably have heard of, and most have probably heard about what it usually does. This is an older asset that isn't properly supported in Unity 2018, and the author has stopped supporting it. So, in this case, going back to the older flowchart, we might go look up the GitHub page for this project and see that it's a legacy. But we might also find, if we go look at the issues on it, we might find the fix for it, which we need to ourselves apply, because licenses don't allow us to release a fixed version of an asset that someone else made. So easiest fix here is, as always, just delete the asset. You can still use the simple light bulb laser easiest if you just place your probes and delete the asset afterwards, because the probes placed aren't dependent on the asset itself. So in this, we just get rid of the whole asset, because we aren't gonna bother right now fixing it. So for example 2, this is something that some of you might have seen in some cases. Cannot mark assets and scenes in one asset bundle. Asset bundle name is coconut palm tree. So this can happen, like, it's usually good if you remember what assets you've been importing into your project. And if you do, you might remember you imported that one free coconut palm tree asset from the asset store into your project, like yesterday or today. The easiest to solve is always, again, just to delete the assets. But if you know how to solve it, this one is also really easy to solve. All you need to go do, so every Unity file has a meta file associated to it, which defines some attributes. And in this case, the scene file for the coconut palm tree defines an asset bundle name, coconut palm tree. And if this has been defined in the meta file, the build process is gonna always try to jam it in there. Like, if the name is there, it's gonna try to go into the whole build, which is gonna break things. So the easy fix here is just removing the name. So just delete the line that says coconut palm tree off, and you're done. Like, that's all there is to fix this issue. And this can also happen if you're building a scene in your project and your Unity crashes. Because during the build process, the SDK always adds a custom scene.vrcv asset bundle name to know what it's being included. And if one of these gets set in one of the scenes you have, and you try to build a different scene, Unity is going to try to include both of those scenes in the same build, and VRChat will get confused, and you will keep getting thrown out back into your home world. So again, easy fix. You just remove the name. And now, if all else fails, ask for help. I'm gonna briefly show like how you should ask help and how you should not ask for help. First of all, show the console. I'm actually gonna use the laser pointer. So we wanna see the console. Press clear on it once, and don't crop. Preferably don't crop anything. Just show the whole Unity folder. Because in some cases, the information needed to help you is gonna be somewhere maybe here or here or here. And if you just crop to the one error, we might not be able to like tell what's happening properly. And that's just gonna lead to more questions, and it's gonna take longer to get you the actual help. There's also, some people might do this. Please don't do this. Use Shift Windows S and Control V, and don't take pictures with your camera. Or even in some cases, I've seen some people take a screenshot, pass that screenshot into Word, and then take a screenshot of the Word document, and then show the screenshot of the Word document to me. I mean, that's at least better than what I have in this example, but Shift Windows S, that's built-in function of Windows. and it helps you take a screenshot easily. So the main points in this whole thing is read instructions, be aware of what you import, and make sure things are up to date. These are the main steps to avoid like having to deal with these issues like at all. But there's also some weirder cases. Like I've only seen 3 people have this error. It basically just manifests as 4 empty errors always in your console, and they don't give any more information. And no matter how much research I did, like people were saying it's because of Windows. Like this is gonna happen in every project you have if you have this issue. And honestly, like I have no idea what's happening with it. I spent a lot of time trying to fix it for someone and no progress at all. Like, it might be easier to fix if I had it on my own computer, but when you're like trying to help someone fix it through text, even if you're trying to fix it for a week for them, it's like at some point you need to just give up. And now that we've solved our other issues, I'm gonna plug myself. This is VR World Toolkit, which is my World Tools Unity editor extension. The main function of it is the world debugger, which finds, currently it does not help you find any compile issues. So in the future, it's gonna. But it's gonna help you check if you have no spawn point set, if you have null spawn point sets, if you have nothing under your spawn point. It checks over 70 things in your scene that might be going wrong. And I keep adding like at least 1 new thing a week into it. And it also shows you like what's in your last build. So you can debug like things like why is my world so big? Like it helps you a whole lot in different things. It also includes an auto setup for post-processing, so you don't need to go through all 50 steps you normally do. You just click 1 button, done, we have post-processing. And does anyone have any questions? If no one has any questions, I'm pretty much done.
Okay, if anybody has any questions, there is a question zone over there, so you can just stand in the big circle over there with a spotlight, so we can everybody can hear you. But yeah. Well, I have a question. Which area would you say you would get the most, like in your experience through like helping out in the VRC Discord and in others?
2 errors: simple light probe laser and all sky free menu. Everyone has probably seen them at this point, because yeah, those are the most common ones, because when you search for a skybox you find all sky free, the free asset, you import it and then your build stops working.
Hi.
Ruby, do you have a question?
Yes. What do you think is the worst Unity default setting when it comes to breaking Unity projects?
The worst default setting. Honestly, error pass is pretty on top, because that keeps coming up. I would say error pass. Like, I'm actually not sure if that's on by default, but you keep seeing it being on people's projects, so they might be just clicking it themselves. So I would need to check on that. But most of the default settings shouldn't break things. It's usually the user that does something, they aren't sure what they're doing, and things break.
Thank you.
I got another question then. What's the worst VRChat default setting?
The worst VRChat default setting? Well, for example, if you just make your own scene descriptor, without using the VRC World Prefab. Nothing tells you that there's no spawn point set properly. Oh wait, actually it does. It does if you have no spawn point set. But wait, people don't read it. I don't know, because people keep running into this problem. Most of the defaults are honestly fine. I would say again, user error.
Thank you.